joining me on a quilting tale today. My name is Shaylin, and in this video I'm going to start a new quilt that's made of the same block, which is a free pattern through Moda Blockheads. I'll be sure to link the block below. But if you caught one of my earlier videos from this summer on my quilt shop hop purchases, you may have seen that I had traveled to Montana and picked out all these beautiful solids that reminded me of the sunset, and I said I had a project in mind for those, and I quickly got started on it when I got home. And so in this video I'm going to show you the block that I selected to make out of these solids and share my plan for it. I don't know what it's like where you live right now, but where I live it's definitely feeling more like fall. Just a couple weeks ago the weather was warm, bright sunny skies, and then over the course of a couple weeks it just got drizzly, much cooler, more gray, just kind of what I think of when I think of fall coming, and I welcome it. By the time school starts, I don't like seeing the bright blue skies outside, wishing I was out there, and certainly when we don't have air conditioning I don't like when it's hot in the classroom, so I welcome this cooler, more drizzly weather come the fall. But I thought this quilt would be appropriately called Summer Sunset because I am making it kind of at the tail end of the summer, and the colors do remind me of a sunset sky. So as the sun is setting, so to say, on our summertime, I thought this would be a fun quilt to make. At the time of filming this, I have made several of the blocks, not quite enough to put together in a quilt top, but you'll get an idea of what these blocks are looking like. So I'll be sure to share the blocks that I've made at the end. But let's get right into it. I'll share my plan for these solids and the block that I'll be making. When I was walking around in a fabric shop, I passed the solids section, and there were all these Kona solids together that I just thought looked beautiful, resembled a sunset, and I thought I want to make something with those. So I started by choosing 8 colors. I got a ½ yard of each. Not really sure what I was going to do with it yet until I started perusing the Moda Blockhead archives. This is from Moda Blockheads 5, and the block I'm going to be using is called Morning Star. This is a free pattern on their website, and so one of the nice things about their patterns is that they give you diagrams that you can color and just test out, you know, how you want your color placement to go. So I just grabbed some colored pencils in those sunset colors, colored a bunch of them, cut it out, and then placed them together to see, do I like that modern look without any sashing or borders? And I really do. And so this obviously is just a 3x3 with 9 blocks, and I would use more than that, but it just gave me a sense of what it would look like. The other nice thing about this pattern is that it gives you 2 sizes, 6 inches and 12 inches. I'm going to be making the 12-inch blocks with these colors, and then I'm also going to offset them with white to give it a little contrast and really make those colors pop. So you can see where I'm placing the white sort of like an outline around the sawtooth star. So I also just grabbed my bolt of Bella solids. This is Bella PFD solids bleach. I just buy it by the bolt. There's the item number if you're interested in this exact one. But I like this one because it's not really yellow, it's not really a cool white, it's just a nice clean white, not too creamy, and also not too stark white. So I thought these would look great together. Now, after doing some math and seeing, do I have enough? I knew I had enough white, but do I have enough colors? I decided I wanted to make 30 blocks, make it a 5x6, and doing the math, I would probably be about just a ½ inch shy of getting enough colored fabric on each ½ yard cut. I just needed just a ½ inch more, and then if you starch and it shrinks a bit, probably more. So if you want to do this the way I was planning with 8 colors, then I would suggest getting at least 5/8 of a yard if a fabric shop will do 5/8. 5/8 of a yard of 8 different colors. However, after perusing Moda Blockheads site some more, I really liked this block too. This is called Falling Star. It's also from Moda Blockheads 5, and I thought that would look great as maybe just a block all by itself. I thought maybe I could put it in the bottom right hand corner, so I'd actually have 29 blocks of Morning Star and then 1 Falling Star block to make 30 total. And so this is a foundation paper piecing pattern, so you know the measurements, how much fabric you need of each, are going to be on here. There's a 12-inch as well. So since I was, you know, about a 1/2 inch short on each, I ended up grabbing a couple more colors because I'd already had these cut. So I grabbed 1 more 1/2 yard of this one, which I already had, but I just thought I had more oranges and yellows, so I chose a couple more that looked like they were in the red family. So I got 2 more 1/2 yard cuts for a total of 10 1/2 yards, but really there's just 9 colors because this is a duplicate. So hopefully that makes sense. For 29 blocks, you will need 3 yards of white fabric if you're going to make them the way that I am. So 3 yards should get you enough for the 29 blocks. So the colors that I ended up with, besides the white, if you're interested, I wrote the numbers down here. So there's Kona Watermelon, 1384. There's actually a Michael Miller cotton couture fabric in there, which was called Coral. And then Persimmon and Kona, number 84. Kona Goldfish, number 474. Kona Mac and Cheese, number 851. Kona Cantaloupe, number 59. Kona Creamsicle, number 185. Kona Lemon, number 23. And then I went back and got the Kona Coral, number 1087. So 9 colors total, but again, 10 1/2 yard cuts because I ended up with a yard of watermelon. Now something else I'm changing is how I'm going to construct these flying geese units. So you can see there's the flying geese with the E's are the triangles and then G's are the triangles on the side. In the pattern, they use that method where you start with a larger square and cut. And I've tried this a few times. I feel like mine always end up a bit wonky, and so I just want to do a method that I feel more comfortable with. And that's just taking the rectangles and putting a square on each end and sewing them down. So I'll demonstrate that. So my quantities and sizes are going to be slightly different for the flying geese units, and I'll post the same information, but how many you need if you do it the method I'm going to use. But you'll get the same looking block regardless of which method you use. So that's the only other change there. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting my fabric. And since all of my blocks besides the Falling Star, I'll do that one at the end and cut separately, but all of these Morning Star blocks will use the white. So I'm going to cut all my pieces, so they'll either be 116 or one has 232 of each piece. So I'll cut all of those at once. As for the colors, I should be able to get enough to make 3 blocks out of each 1/2 yard cut, and they'll be swapped out. So I have color 1 here in this red color, so you know, if I cut this into all the pieces, into all the color 1 and color 2 pieces, I can use color 1 pieces in a block and then the color 2 pieces of the same color in a different block. So that's where I'm getting 3 blocks total when you mix with another color. On a side note, if you opt to cut 5/8 of a yard for each color, you should be able to get 4 blocks. So using the 1/2 yard, I'll have enough to make 3 blocks. Remember, when you swap pieces of another color, you'll get 3 blocks and there'll be fabric left over. If you get 5/8 yards cut of each color, you should have enough to do 4 blocks. So think about how many blocks you need, and you can use that as a guide to help decide how many colors you want to use or how much of each color you want to get. Alright, I have exactly 232 of my E squares cut, 2.5 inch squares, and I really love the Stripology ruler because, I'll be honest, cutting fabric is my least favorite part of the quilting process, and especially when you're cutting the same fabric over and over again, and a plain solid at that. I just want it to go quicker, so thanks to the Stripology ruler, it just takes a few minutes. Now that the white's done, it's time to get in the more fun colors, and the colors will all be cut the same way as the other colors. I've got all my pieces cut now and the different sizes labeled, and so now I'm going to start pulling my pieces for the blocks. Since all of them are going to have white, I'm not going to pull these for the blocks yet. I'll just take them as I need them, and I'm working on each block. But I'm going to want 4 B's, 4 C's, 8 E's, and 4 F's per block. And then I'm breaking these into what I'm calling color 1 and color 2. So if color 1 is this orange shape here, this is the sawtooth star in the middle, those will be my color 1 pieces. And so I'm going to need 1 H, which I have these 4.5 inch squares here. I'm also going to need 8 G squares of the same color. And then for color 2, that's going to be these corner squares and then the exterior flying geese. So I will need 4 A's for my 4 corners. And again, this is in the second color, and 4 D's. So I have D labeled up here. So I'll just make sure that my H and G fabrics are the same color and my A and D fabrics are the same color. Now when I pick these colors, I do want some contrast. I will probably avoid choosing, for instance, these two because they look so close. They're not the same, but they look pretty close to each other. So I am gonna still go for contrast as I mix and match these. So maybe I'll just start up at the top. I'll get 1H, and then I want 8 of the same color. So I'll just count out 8 of them. Oh, and that was the perfect amount. Okay, so then I want a contrasting color. So maybe I'll do this one. Oh, sorry, this one here. My D's. I want 4 D's. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 4 A's of the same color here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I will just group all of these pieces together. I like to put the smaller ones on top and the bigger ones in the back because I can use a wonder clip and just clip these pieces together, and I'll just keep making more. Now I'm just going to keep going until I've made 29 combinations. And the nice thing about grouping them is the pieces are distinct enough. I'll know which pieces I need to use without keeping them labeled, and so I'm not worried that, you know, they're not labeled within each bunch of fabrics. The nice thing about choosing the fabrics, all of the combinations now, rather than just picking some and sewing as I go, is that if I get down to the end and I'm only left with the same colors, or colors that are too close, then that would be an issue. So I can address that now if I make my combinations and find that I need to mix things up some more. It's easier to do it at this stage rather than when I've started sewing blocks together. My 29 groupings are finished, and it's good that I sorted them because I can see some duplicates in here. So what I did was group them by color 1, so the top and back fabric are identical. And so I can see that in this set I have an identical combination, and in this set I have 3 that are identical. So I'm going to mix and match them a little more. The others all have all 3 different combinations per pile here, which is good, but I want a little more variety, especially this one I want to break up. So I'm going to mix them a little more, and then we can sew a block. Alright, now I've got them so there are no identical combinations. There might be some inverses, like there's this yellow and watermelon, and there's also yellow and watermelon here, but they're not the same. The large square in the back is not the same color as the large square in this combination. So inverses I was okay with, but just wanted to make sure there were no identical combinations here. First we're going to start out with our A pieces. Those are the larger squares. And for each A piece, we're going to sew a B piece, and after those are sewn, we'll sew on a C piece, and we'll make 4 of these corner units. So I just chain piece, and then you can press. So the seam first, and then just press to the dark side. And then this piece will go on next to the bottom. Alright, I've got my 4 corner pieces ready to go. I'm going to just set those aside. And now we're going to make some flying geese. So you're going to need 8 of your white E squares, 4 of your F rectangles that are white, and you're just going to interchange them with your colored pieces. So you have your 8 colored squares. They're going to be the sides of the geese on the white, and then the white is going to be the sides of the geese on your rectangles. So when you assemble these, you still want 4.5 by 2.5 inch rectangles when you finish these units. So to make one of these, you're going to take one of your squares. You're just going to sew corner to corner, and I usually stitch just a little to the left of the line. You can either draw the line or I use the diagonal tape on my sewing machine, but that way when you fold it over, you'll get this piece. So you'll fold it, press it, and then you can trim off 1/4 inch away from your stitch line. And then you'll do the same on the other side. You'll sew corner to corner and stitch it, so you'll end up with your flying geese unit. So I attached all the sides to one side first, and so now you're just going to fold on your stitch line, and because I go just a stitch to the left of the stitch line, closer to the corner, it all lines up nicely. So when you press these, I'm going to just, out of the frame here, I'm going to just put it under the clapper. But when you press them, you want to make sure that's what you're doing. You don't want to move the iron around. You want to just put the iron down and press. You can lift and press, but you don't want to distort that triangle. Then for each piece, you're going to open it back up and trim about 1/4 inch away from the stitch line, just cutting off the corner. And that'll take out the bulk in that flying geese unit. So I'll do that for each of these. If you have any that weren't 2.5 by 4.5, if you ended up with some a little bigger, you could take the stitches out and do it again, or trim it down. But you want that rectangle to stay 2.5 by 4.5. Alright, now we'll go ahead and attach the other side. Stitch corner to corner and press it down to create the flying geese unit. And by the way, I hold on to these little triangles that got cut off. If you had larger ones, you could sew them together and make half square triangles. I also use these as leaders or enders when I start chain piecing, and so I never toss these out. One more suggestion: when you're attaching your flying geese corners, whether it's the first or second, you want your stitch lines to meet at the bottom of your unit. Now when you stitch, you want this line here. I always choose the side to start at, so I would start stitching here, from here to here, rather than from this corner here. When I start on a corner, my machine tends to just chew that corner up, and it gets, pressed, it gets all caught in the feed dogs. And so I always, when I can, start from the side and go. Just like on this piece, I started from here because it's the side of the gold rectangle here and then end on the corner. So that's just something that might help if you notice your corners get caught in the machine. I'm going to do the same thing. Just press to the sides. These are all pressed now, but before I cut off the back 2 layers, what I like to do is just take these to my cutting mat and measure and make sure that they're still 4.5 by 2.5 inches, so the original dimension of the rectangles. And the reason I like to do that before cutting that last bit off is you can kind of turn it over and see. Like this one has just a tiny bit of white peeking over, so I'd be okay with that one. But if you see one that's just, you know, drastically over, you might trim it down just to make sure that it stays at the 4.5 by 2.5. This one I can tell is slightly crooked. There's a little on each side, so I would want to trim that down because what I want is the white rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and trim some of these, just make sure they're where I want them before I trim off the back 2 layers. I'm lined up to the 4.5 mark here, 2.5 down here, and I can see that little bit of overhang. I'm just going to take that off. And that's why I said just a little sliver showing is okay, because, you know, when you sew your fabric, you might lose a tiny bit of that original rectangle. So I'm just going to trim. It should be very minimal. So like I said, this method is different than the one in the Blockheads pattern. You could follow that one, but like I was saying before, I just feel like I get more accurate piecing when I do it this way. I know just with some more practice I could probably get the other way to work fine for me, but I'm just gonna stick to the method that has been working for me. So now you're going to take 2 flying geese units that have the opposite colors, and you're gonna make a little white chevron or little arrow here. So we're just gonna sew across. When you sew, I would put the colored rectangle on top, because then you can see that intersection point. You want your stitch line, it should hit at 1/4 inch, but you want to hit right where that X is formed, and that'll give you a nice clean point. And it's nice because the one you're sewing to, there's nothing to match up. So you want to check that your points are intact here, and you can decide how you want to press. You know, you can press to either side if you'd like. I'm going to press open. I would normally consider, you know, is there anything it needs to nest with, and press that way, but since you don't have to nest the seam with anything, I'm going to press open just to help it lie a little flatter. And also, I'm going to give it some steam. It also reveals this point up here and here, so when I need to sew 1/4 inch across and connect, I can keep this point intact and not cut anything off. So I'm going to press open. If there were seams that could nest with something else I'd be connecting my units to, I tend to err on the side of nesting over bulkiness, but that's all just personal preference. So I'm going to go ahead and keep pressing these open, and then we can build our block. So to build this block, I'm going to start by forming that sawtooth star, so match the colors to the center square. And then you're going to put your corner units in with the color in the outside corner. Oh, that's going to look so pretty. So when you connect, you're going to connect by rows. You'll connect these three, and these three. And because seams will nest, these vertical seams here will nest, this is where I do consider bulk and which side I want to press to. So for the first and third row, I'm going to press toward the corner pieces because there's already bulk from the flying geese seams. For the middle row, we're going to press toward the center square. So I'm going to go ahead and put that together and we'll see the final block. And when you are sewing these, I would take the side that has the point you don't want to cut off and put that on top, because when I'm sewing my 1/4 inch down, I can see that I want my stitch line to hit on the corner of that little red piece, and then I'll keep going down. For the middle, I'm going to stitch with this piece on top, so again I can see that I want my stitch line to hit right there where those intersect. So anytime you can see where those intersection points are, I would place those on top. Alright, I've got my rows connected, and just so you can see the back, a reminder to press toward the corners on the top and bottom row, and for the middle, press toward that center square. So since I've done that, these vertical seams will nest when I connect them. So now I'm just going to sew these last 2 seams here. Alright, here is a finished block. I pressed the seams just to one side, reason being, when I start connecting it to other blocks, I can rotate it. It doesn't matter which side, so I can rotate to get them to nest. But this should be 12.5 inches unfinished, so I'll just trim it up. But that is the first. 28 more of these to go. It's really vibrant, and that white just makes those colors pop out, so I can't wait to make the others. So the next video with this sunset quilt, I will have all the stars made, and then I'll make that falling star block to put it all together. But still have quite a few to do, but I'm really excited for it. It's been fun working with these solid colors. I really enjoy how quickly these blocks come together, especially having all the pieces cut out ahead of time. And as I've made more and I see them together, I just am getting more excited about finishing this quilt because the colors are just so gorgeous together. And so I'll be sure to end with that little montage of what I've made so far. And the next time I share this quilt, I'll have a finished top for you, including that extra block, the falling star block, that I want to add for a little bit of interest in this quilt. So I hope you'll stay tuned for that. Thank you for liking this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. I appreciate those of you who have subscribed. Thank you for helping me to grow this channel, and I look forward to sharing more wonderful projects with you. I'll see you next time. Bye.